So this is the Final Fantasy VII battle theme. It's at 180 BPM throughout, and as you can see, the different sections are grouped together: woodwind, strings, brass, percussion, and tune percussion. And they're all colored according to their sections. So let's have a listen. So that's a track, and let's explore the project. Now, as you can see, each section here is colored and grouped. One thing to notice is I'm going to show you the mixer. And each section, as you can see, the violins to the strings here, they're all sent to bus 31. So each section, the brass here is bus 32. So each section you can see has its own bus. So this is bus 31. So the strings and the horns, percussion are sent. Each of them have their own reverbs as well if you want to send them to reverb. So these are the brass sections, and they're sent to reverb 3, bus 3. So you send them this way, bus, and you can set up and rename. How you rename a bus is to just double click and name based on that. So you know when you send to a bus, you can tell which bus you've been sending to because of the names. That's a way to organize a lot of instruments, especially orchestral instruments. And it's been sent to bus 3, and bus 3 has a large space hall, big string reverb with the wet pushed to 100%. For these buses, I always push the wet to 100%, so it's easier to sort of judge and manage. If the wet's not at 100%, what you're going to get is an increase in volume in the dry signal as well when you send it to the bus. So I strongly suggest just make it 100% wet. And then we have alternate buses with different reverbs, so that we can set up different kind of sounds. We'll get to that later when we find instruments that are sent to those buses. So your percussion as well is the same thing. The percussion is sent to bus 30, and you can see that in the percussion track for all these tracks, they're not the bus is not being sent to reverb because I want to have different reverbs for different instruments. So let's check out, say for example, this one, stops. So it's just very lightweight stuff, right? And we check out this one. So all these lightweight stuff, they add up to sort of form sort of bigger sounds. As you can hear, it's kind of like quite low power and not very sort of realistic. And all these are being sent to bus 1. And bus 1, it's a bit of a shorter reverb. So it's a smooth vocal hall. Alright, it feels not as spacious as bus 3, and I didn't want the percussion to feel too sort of drowned out. So you know, as layers get put together, you can see, okay, let's go to the MIDI now. You can see that, let's close this one up, that as they get put together, they become more and more richer, and each one adds kind of like a layer. So So individually, you can see that these tracks aren't particularly realistic or very hard-hitting by themselves. But when you start adding different layers, they sound better together because they sort of like blend into something that feels a bit more human. I'm going to show you the low end bits. Okay, for example, this one is sort of like the big drums. And it's not fantastic sounding big drums, but you know, they sound big enough. It's under Alchemy and it's under Action Drums. So you get this kind of big-ish drums in Alchemy. But it's not fantastic. So we sort of like blend everything together with more Alchemy stuff. This is Moment of Impact under Drum Cinematic. Push it to Comb Tail Morph. And this one's a bit noisier. Put it together. Not fantastic either. You can see that this one's been sent to bus 2, which has a space designer as well. And this one is a different one. It's a dark piano hall. It's even shorter than the vocal hall. So, you know, you can mix different reverbs together depending on the kind of sound you want. But, you know, have a listen. Your ears are the ultimate guide. So, you know, you have to have some sort of like judgment about the kind of sound that you want. Try it out. And if it works, great. So you have these two sounds. Not super convincing. Then we add a shaker. Okay, a bit more organic to it. And this is a studio toolkit. Let's just click on this one. Under EXS24, you can find it under Drums, Percussion, Acoustic Drum Kit, Studio Toolkit. Studio Toolkit is great because it's got a lot of little snare rolls and many different snares and stuff. It's like, it's truly a toolkit for you to so you got, you know, you get this kind of like rolls stuff. Right, and that's pretty cool once you add everything together. With the snares, it's starting to sound better. Oh, that's alright, starting to get there. And then there's a stereo drum kit, you know, which you can find here under acoustic drum kits as well. And start mixing that in. And that's just the snare going pop, 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 pop. But it works together with the snare. And the shaker feels a bit more alive. Now we add some cymbals. Just very light, sort of like ride cymbals. And then we have like another kick here. This is a tighter kick. Right? And then you have an orchestral kit. So they all kind of go together with, these are like the kicks. And these are like the top end. With the deeper stuff. And then the timpanis. So it starts getting a little bit more convincing. So you need to pay attention to the sort of like combination of stuff going together. Now, that's the percussion. And you can see there's a lot of different things going on. Like, we have a timpani, under tune percussion, orchestral timpani, and I like to add a compressor, and the compressor I like to add is the opto toms, because timpani is kind of like a tom, to bring out the sort of, yeah, the timpani is a bit, otherwise it's going to sound a little bit weak. And also without the reverb, it's just too dry, so. And this bus 2 reverb is perfect for it. It's not too long, you know. This dark piano hall kind of works really nicely. And you know, you have your sort of cymbals as well. Here and here, just to get something going. And then I have an extra cymbal here. So you have like 2 cymbals going on. So don't be afraid to combine stuff and combine different sounds. Yeah, you just have to kind of go with it. And you can see like even the brass, right? The trumpets, okay, we have all these are from the same library under orchestral brass. So all these French horn staccato, French horn legato, trombones and all. And you can see these sort of are split into different articulations, right? Naturally. And sometimes we want, like you can see French horn staccato, 3 of them happen here. And they're all at different fader levels. Have a look at the faders here, right? So depending on the mix that you want, you don't have to automate, you can just have different ones. It's to emulate sort of volume and the mix as well. Sometimes you find that something jumps out too much in the mix with your sample tracks, and then you can just create a new track with this duplicate track button here, and then just pull down the layers and pull the MIDI over to that section. So maybe this could have been here. Sorry. Yeah, like this could have been here, and then, I just duplicate it, pull the fader down or up, and then just pull it back down. So, that's an easy way to get your mix sounding right as you go along arranging. And I tend to arrange as we go along. So this is the brass section. And as usual, tuba are the tuba sections, but I tend to use trombones, legato, or staccato depending, because they have more power, just a bit more brassiness. And don't be afraid to kind of layer them a little bit. I mean, sometimes in the sort of sample world, we want to get that big sound without like saying that, oh, I just want to have 4 brass parts. And sometimes it's just not large enough and you need a little bit of help. For example, I'm going to show you like, we have 2 tracks here, which is under brass as well, a full brass legato and staccato. And sometimes that just comes in to support everything. Like this line here just... It's just this brass line that supports all the different combinations here. So and this part is sort of like this build up, right? So we have a little bit of automation, just a bit of automation, and then it drops back down. Not very much automation in this track because it's kind of like big most of the time. If you wanted to, you can download this and sort of play around with the automation and add a little bit more here and there. You can always just turn it off if you don't like it. But it's fun to experiment and to see how you can get more dynamics from the song, like loud, soft, 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 loud, 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 soft, and that's kind of the way a lot of these tracks are sort of played out as well. And then you go to strings, and most of the strings can be found in this library under, not this one, under orchestral strings, and these are all the sections. And as I mentioned, sometimes you need a little bit of help from, just mixing something else in. And in this case, you should go under pop strings. EXS strings 1 and 2 are pretty good as well to mix in with other stuff. So sometimes I just mix in a little bit of stuff here. Right? And so, and you have your little sort of like, with brass, it's nice to have these little crescendos as well that you come in. Gives it a little bit more life. So every part that you have sort of like a crescendo, feel free to automate and also add crescendos in to sort of give it a bit more life. You might have to time the samples correctly. You might have to push it left and right a little bit, depending on when the crescendo peaks. Yeah. So the strings, you do the same thing as well. Sometimes don't worry too much about. And you have all these runs, and sometimes you sort of they sound a little bit fake by themselves, but in context, they generally sound pretty okay. So I really like the reverb bass center, which is bus 3. It's give this sense of spaciousness. So the reverbs are really important for these sections, the string and the horn sections. The flute, I'm sorry, the woodwinds are just pretty small in this whole, just little flourishes, and they do add something, especially with the runs. So these are not sent to any bus because there's so few tracks. They just go straight to the main out, and we send them to say the bus reverbs, yeah, like say bus 3. So you can break them down when you listen to the project itself and play around with the project. There are some nice little flourishes that I want to sort of highlight. Like you have, let's see. Yeah, you have little runs here together with the xylophones. So this is not a xylophone, this is harp. Originally it was, I think, used a xylophone, and then I switched it to a harp. So you can find either orchestral harp. And these kind of runs are great for sort of like bringing out the big parts. Right, like a glissando. I honestly don't know if this is possible. This run is possible to be played with a harp, but it kind of sounds right. So, you know, my philosophy when it comes to these kind of things is if it sounds right, it's right. Because, you know, you're already doing it in the box. You don't have to worry about, you know, the strict laws or something. And if it sounds fine, it's fine. And if you have to record a real orchestra, then, you know, the arranger, the orchestrator will figure it out. So this African kalimba, it's probably like some sort of xylophone somewhere or something, but I found the xylophone, stock xylophone too bright. So I substituted with an African kalimba, and you can hear it sort of in context. It's sort of percussive, right? And it adds a little nice rhythmic thing going on there, especially working with the rhythm. And you know, there's some sound effects going on here. This one is the Trailer FX1, which is great for some of the big hits and metallic stuff. A little bit big for this section, but you know, in context it kind of works. I want to give it a bit of a note, so I paired it with an alchemy warning bell. So together they sound like that. Sounds like a single sound. So, you know, to get a certain texture, sometimes you have to layer different sounds together to sort of get the kind of sound that you want, especially for percussion, I find. And just wanted to say something that I don't normally highlight so much, but something to show you is, let me see, on the master bus, I have a compressor, and this is a regular platinum, the smooth compressor. I really like this. It's quite clean. It's a pretty low ratio, and the threshold is basically set to 0. But what I prefer is the limiter on this sounds better than the, you know, the limiters that you find in Logic, which is under here. Adaptive limiter, I really dislike it. I find that it doesn't sound good. The regular limiter, it's fine, still not as transparent as this one. So, you know, you can use a compressor as a limiter as well. It even at 0, it kind of picks up a little bit of the... It kind of shaves off 1 or 2 dB and squeezes it a little bit, which I find kind of works too. So, you know, platinum with the limiter, it's, for me, a better choice than just the pure Logic limiters. So that's something to consider. You can put this on your master bus. Just make sure to pull it down below 0 because it clips at 0. And let's see. So this section here is a repetition of this section. except that the second time it comes around, you have your full brass supporting it. So I could have pulled this in here as well, but I wanted the second section to be a bit bigger. This was basically a copy and paste across it. And yeah, that's kind of it for this track.